for 2 p.m. It's called Building the Confidence. And Christina Pesto, the discussion moderator, will say a few more words about what you were going to speak there about. I can say that we have discussed it already, except no one was present. Well, in general, our plan was to talk about, or rather, with people who organize residences, who have been doing that for a long time, or who are just beginning, and who we met for the first time in 2019, first in St. Petersburg, then in Yekaterinburg, during the first residence forum, and to discuss what has changed over these years, because they have been quite exciting, and not just because some people developed and some created new projects and new formats, but including due to the pandemic, and also about how the pandemic influenced our relations within the network. Whether there have been examples of cooperation, and what and how was shared among the residences. And then again, we would want to talk and reflect about the variety of the local contexts and how they impact the residential programs. If in 2019 the main goal was just to become visible to each other, what kind of goals and objectives we have for ourselves today in 2020, and how we can run our operations inside. And we would like to finish with how we can be institutionally mindful of each other, what we can do for each other, and what we can leave each other with at the end of the conference. And the idea to bring together our two discussions is great. I believe that if we merge some of our ideas in the dialogue, it would be excellent. I believe that building the confidence conversation about Russian residences is very important, and we'll try to get back to it in some time, perhaps after the new year, via Zoom conference probably, and having digested everything that has happened to us here, we could then think about forward actions, joint actions. So we are taking this conversation out of the frame, so we keep the main subject, confidence, and we proceed to the conversation, which is called we're not saying goodbye, how to keep care without saying goodbye. The floor is given to Jan Swarovski. I believe Jan is a translator from German, and the experience of translation is also one of the aspects of hospitality. And this would be the time to thank our conference interpreters that have been translating what we've been saying for the 4 days. A round of applause, please. And Jan, as a translator, has residential experience, in particular translators' residences, that may differ greatly from art residences, and it would be very exciting to see that perspective of the residency. As far as I understand, from the previous days, it is common practice to start by saying where you've been. So I have been to 6 residences. Most of them are writers and translators residences. I must say that not all art residencies understand take someone as an artist unless they do something with their hands. Well, there could be media art, performances, installations. These are all artists, writers, composers, musicians, actors. So 95% of cases, they're all artists. In writers' residences, translator is not a writer, because a literary residence is devoted to someone who creates literature as a piece of author's work. We are not, as translators, we are not authors, we are reproducers. So translators' residences is not something that exists in Russia, that barely exists worldwide. In Europe, there are 3 translators' residences, European translators, college for Germans primarily, but it's about 40 accommodations. Then translators college in Arles for the French population, and in Switzerland, that's the German-speaking part of Switzerland. But again, it's open for all language pairs. Lauren may be the smallest of them, just 12 residence places. I had 5 residences on open calls, 5 out of 6, and once I was an invited guest, and this was my first experience of being invited as a writer, where everyone else was an artist. This was the summer cottage of Rybushinsky this August. And it was very interesting because my texts were put on the walls as part of the artworks. So getting into the environment of people working with other practices has a reverse effect. In Russia, I was a resident in Peredelkino when we had 80 people, each doing their own thing. And as you can see, translators' residencies took off. My today's session is supposed about the day of bidding goodbyes and commitments, and I wanted to collect questions and quotes of what I heard in order to put them around for discussion that we can talk about in a free dialogue mode. If someone wants to say something, and I believe that organization, burnout, rest, and everything else, and what is weekend, if we remember the Downton Abbey. So my main questions are up there on the screen. As for bidding goodbyes, who are we to our guests? Are we hosts or are we friends? And how a distinction can be made if we are both hosts and guests? Are we coaches or friendly criticists? That something that Arutunova was talking about yesterday, traditional coaches were renamed into critical friends in Swiss residences because they would spend a lot more time with their proteges than coaches would normally do. My residence was devoted to the modern German theater and German drama, and I had to wait for 1 year before Swiss theaters would open, and my coach would work with me in a traditional mode, whereas everyone else went online. And I believe that given our experience of the past few years of the pandemic, working online is with us every day and takes a lot more time, even though we do the same things as in offline, but it can last for hours on end, context discussions, and we are supposed to be in touch all the time. And where it all ends, this is about work-life balance. And who needs breaks when the residence is over and everybody goes their own way? Does the artist, the guest, need a break in order to digest everything that was acquired, to make a pause between the projects, to mark a certain milestone and to go forward? Or is this break required for us as hosts, as organizers, for us to draw conclusions, to revisit our care riders that we talked about yesterday, and to understand what we need to work on before our next guests arrive? And it turns out that this, obviously, handling applications, prepare timetables. It turns out that this break between residences can be even more intense work than during the residence. So when can we have rest? And all these things are related to what I'm thinking about bidding goodbye. And what relates to promise is what relates to research residences. My residence in Basel was a research residence. Prior to that, all my residences had been project residences. And the 3 months that I worked for hours on end to assemble the materials is just the start. I now have so many things to do with that material. I need to understand that it has to be a great networking opportunity, and there are so many people I need to get in touch with. I got so many ideas how the format that I was based on need to be changed, and I was supported by my coach. I met with different people who wanted to cooperate, and I realized that I need to take this project forward for another 3 years, and that all stems from 3 months. I need to submit the results to report. I normally I'm used to giving reports on the ready things, and here I have trouble understanding what I can be reporting about and how I can work with my coach whose fee-paying time is ended. And another question that was raised during the discussion in the art residence of Vixa yesterday, Elaine, it was your topic about getting back to residences. You said that it would be so nice to gather everyone together again, and I understand it and feel it from my personal experiences, because there are certain residences where even before leaving you feel that I'd like to get back emotion, it's so good here, and you realize that it won't happen. Residence is not for that. It's about giving the opportunity to different people. You cannot appropriate and usurp all those opportunities. It doesn't work that way. Well, it may work that way. For example, houses of translators can have you with repeated projects, not more often than once a year, or you can pay mere pittance like 25 euro a week. Well, obviously, writers cannot make a living from their work. So we come someplace where we can focus on one job rather than 2, 3, or 5, like in my case. And obviously we cannot afford paying more than 25 euro. So we want to get back. Does the residents want us to get back? And who needs that most, us or the residents? And again, about the topic to bring all people together. This is networking between the past and future residents that can begin by passing various life hacks to each other. So we discussed it yesterday. You don't need just the coach who would help you professionally, but also a guide who will help you locally, well, to know where you can buy your groceries, where you can spend your leisure time. In Basel, where I had my latest residence, there were several Russian residents at various residences, and apart from other colleagues, from other colleagues, so we grouped, started exchanging life hacks, and we were from all sorts of spheres. I was a translator, a modern composer, a researcher of the noise and nature sounds theory, a monumentalist, an Iranian singer. We were all so different, but at the same time, we had those points of contact which we keep after leaving residences. This is also sort of post-production that graduates from bidding goodbye into promises, but not institutionalized, but interpersonals, from one to another. These are the topics that I can offer you for the conversation. I have a few slides with motivators and demotivators. Just choose your topic and we'll discuss this. So you're talking about those host of friend, coach, or friendly critic. So I think we have talked about it during the open discussion with Vlad. It was fairly heated. So, I believe that our first topic is about burnout. I made just 3 screenshots from my 3 working chats that were open at the same time. So at 6:47 in the morning, I was being asked if I was in the chat, and then when someone was taking a bath, there were communications. And this is a quote from the letter that I received this summer from the organizers of one of the residents. Dear colleagues, I respond to your mails from Tuesday to Friday within the certain times. And this made me think, I have to manage myself, right? Okay. Well, about handling emails is very painful. So we talked about need for residences for mothers. This is an excerpt of the book, Second Shift. It's not about just working mothers. It's also for us organizers of the residences, and this distinction between friend and host, because you are online 24/7 by 365, and once you've worked with all the applications, councils, residents, you get back and keep working on that, because we are enthusiasts and we realize that we must. We'll get angry and leave from Philip Kotler from marketing of performing arts. So let's sift through those motivators, because if you want to explain everything, we'll have no time. So retreat, femtouch, empowerment. This is what we do during the break, and whether we have it at all. And I accumulated here all the promises about staying in touch. And one thing, how can we stay in touch with people we didn't like? This is something that I worked on with a shrink recently. Do I have the right for something that I don't like? do I have the right to feel negative emotions, or as organizer I should be always positive, without any negative? Well, I believe that you do have that right. So are we supposed to vote? I'm not sure about everyone else, but I think we can have that conversation as far as transferring the bus back home. But I think that someone can start the ball rolling by speaking things. We can play the round robin here. The people will start where they want to.
So we can start in another direction. Oh yeah, if you
anyway,
can,
so just if you want, yeah.
Thank you so much again for the great translation.
But you have to use mic.
Well, thank you so much for the great translation. So the last couple of days, so it was fantastic to just have the possibility to listen.
Do we want to invite maybe everyone to join this circle? Может быть, мы всех хотим пригласить сесть в круг, потому что, мне кажется, тут нет уже разделения на... Нет? Нет?
Да, и просто я хотела еще сказать, что я, к сожалению, сейчас уйду, потому что у нас начинается параллельно большая сессия для онлайн-участников, и потому что очень многие слушали нас онлайн в эти дни, и я думаю, им тоже есть что сказать, и вот, но я с вами. Sorry, Bizat, for the interruption.
I'm the first person, so I had to just a little bit think about the questions, of course, and I have a method of thinking through talking. It's a very pedagogical tool, basically, for me. And hopefully, when I'm talking, I can formulate my thoughts in a better way. But when I was listening to you, I was thinking about, I'm an artist, visual artist, and usually when I go to residency, so there is some sort of issues of site specificity. So I'm trying actually to locate myself within the environment that I'm there. But when you go, because I write too, so I'm a writer too. So sometimes I have writing residency. But writing residency for me is not site-specific writing. I go and isolate myself and write. So there is two completely different logic in that sense. When I go to the artistic residency, I'm very open. I'm trying actually to explore. When I'm in the writing residency, I don't want to meet anybody, basically. I'm sitting and doing work. The other things that I think, of course, due pandemic that Christina mentioned, I think education is very important because, we suddenly understood that there is something called Zoom that we didn't know before it exists. But in relation to your maybe question that, just how emotion could play the role, I think is very important. I think there is no possibility to create any healthy relationship without emphasizing the notion of emotion. But is very important question is very crucial that what could we do with that emotion after that? Of course, we need to keep our disagreement, and disagreement is part of that form of healthy relationship. But the main question is after that, what could we do with that disagreement? Or when we are talking about the notion of hospitality, and in a kind of, usually we are talking about the kind of brief moment of encounter that host and guest, they meet. But is it possible to talk about the permanent state of hospitality? So, and then when it comes to the permanent state of hospitality, always there should be some sort of agonism and disagreement.
Кто-нибудь хочет поделиться, может быть, своим опытом относительно тех последних двух пунктов, которые озвучил наш коллега? Опытом того, что делать с теми эмоциями, отношениями, которые у вас сформировались между хозяином и гостем, с той или с другой стороны за время вашего пребывания, и куда потом с этим эмоциональным багажом двигаться.
I was just thinking that maybe I could somehow react on oh, I'm sorry. I always miss up. I don't know. It's английском. Окей.
Знаете, давайте лучше по-русски,
Давайте
потому что у нас
по-русски, да,
большая часть
извините.
аудитории.
Про то, что сказал сейчас Бекзат.
So I think what Bizad has just said is closely related to what we talked an hour ago with Vlad when we were discussing those nuances and subtleties of human and friendly relations and about the permanence of hospitality. And I want to point out that friendship and any emotional links that occur between us, they generally have no goal. So hospitality in this respect has no tendency towards permanence, towards continuity. So hospitality is always different. And at a certain moment in time, when working with residential programs, there is a need to give each other an opportunity to distance oneself, to stop looking at each other as a guest or a host, and assume some other roles, to assume different roles, and stop playing this duality game. And probably this is a very good practice in order to understand who that other is and what that other can be. That's what I think. Well, I think it is close to the idea that every psychologist should have his or her own psychologist. So apart from conferences that we finally start arranging after art residences started to emerge across Russia, so we need some horizontal retreats where we discuss not only our everyday organizational business issues, but where we can simply discuss who we are and what our feelings are. So we need some kind of the so-called safe zones where we can engage in the so-called social hygiene. You see, our guests, they always exchange impressions, where they were, how it was, but our exchange of impressions, sometimes it takes place, but on a limited scale. And, there was a case, activist Dasha Sirenka, she's an art activist. When bullying for art and social activism promoted a femdacha project. So this is a shelter for activists, and it works in the following way. So now we spend our time and energy and effort to make others feel better. But we also need to do something with ourselves. So we might face, we might face those, that burn off that might happen. And we need to arrange some retreats where we can come together and there we can somehow try to remedy the burnout that might happen. So to me, this is a highly relevant topic. I visited many conferences of art residences, and the topic of this conference, because Tara Elfing, who talked about hospitality to us, was one of the co-authors of the book that was printed about hospitality, that was published about hospitality. So that's why I thought that, this is the important topic. So I always contribute something in order to do something. And my practices are very expansive. I never have breaks. I just switch from one activity to another activity. So that's why now I felt tears rolling up in my eyes. And I realized that during the first session in Nizhny Novgorod, it was very valuable to me when Zhenya told about a residency, about our residence in Golubitskoye, because earlier no one was talking about it, nobody was hosting it. And it was a functional format for us. We wanted to have a resident who would be well aware of other residences so that we could get some feedback. So we wanted that residents to reflect on our residents, and we could use that to our benefit. So it was not about hospitality, but it was more about investing into the development of the format. But it turned out that for Zhenya, care was very important. And in this respect, I started thinking who I want to be when I burn out. Well, probably, I had an experience of staying in an art residence in the house of Pichelin, and I also stayed in a Tokyo art residence called Paradise, established in a hotel. So it's a nice place because in that hotel there are a lot of slot machines, and you are surrounded by Japanese. And the Japanese are very fast people, so they always anticipate what you might need. They buy tickets for you in advance, they prepare meals for you in advance, and they care about you and they focus on you all the time. I wouldn't say that, so it was very unobtrusive, it was very gentle. And I liked the way it was arranged there. And yesterday at the after party, I got acquainted with Belov, Mr. Belov, one of the residents in Vyksa. I didn't know how he looked like, but then we got acquainted, and he told me that he liked his life in the art residence. And I realized that the more you distance from those whom you take care about, and you distance from yourself. And I am thankful for this wrap up because it helped me to focus on that. It helped me to slow down and to feel that I'm tired and this is normal.
I believe it's great that you and Zhenya talked about that case. Probably we should take this on board. We don't invite each other to our places. We lack this feedback tool and exchange of experience, not like here with 60 people around. So I'm not a member of the Association of Art Residences, and 90% of the people, apart from those whom I've worked with at other projects, I don't know. And this is a way to learn more about each other and to be on that horizontal level when you are a host and the host. So the host of the residence stops being the host in that case. And you may feel as a guest in your own residence in that case and, sort of try it out. So I believe this is a good way to look at that. I have never come across residences for owners of residences. Yesterday we talked about what Pchelin does for art managers, and they have very short-term stays just because the people they see in their audience, among their audiences, cannot stay longer. But attitudes may change. Some people may not like this format, say they don't want to be in the residence any longer, or they chose something else. Well, I used to not be able to imagine what not wanting to be in the residence could be. That was strange to me, the whole idea. And you can only understand what is happening when you are a guest, even if everything is impeccable. If there is no slightest discomfort, yet you still get this information. And this can be handled through engagement only. So let's give the mic to our colleague. A few words about what Yulia said about residences and hosts. Probably you should stop considering yourself a host to come to a residence, to enter it. That's a general question. And an example, again, with my favorite Delfina Foundation, they have a residence connecting their practice, which is for collectors. I believe that this is a very important space where your ego deflates, and this is huge for the art world. And another example, Anya Ilchenko, who will be responsible for the VC residence. For a long time, she would spend a lot of time at the Delfina Foundation in order to understand how it works. Can it be a residence for the residence owner? Well, it could be. And a few side notes about burnouts and things. I believe that this is about, well, if we think about the residence as a finely tuned structure, what baffles me in the Delfina Foundation, I feel surrounded by a number of people who remove all thoughts and responsibilities from you. So they ran a fundraiser for me. I spent there 3 months for the politics of food. So I didn't have to stir a finger. So this art foundation financed all my residents. So I was totally taken care of. We would get acquainted with artists and critics. So there was very mild but carefully thought out networking where I could meet people who are interested in what I do, and I was interested in what they do. It's not just about hierarchical connections, but also links between the artists. And my beautiful friend, my beautiful late friend, Frebi Ban, once said that when you meet very good friends, this is a feeling which is very close to falling in love. And very many residences for me are that feeling of falling in love. So what do you do, that emotional luggage? You can cry on the plane, you can write letters, do projects together. In Delfina Foundation, I had that safe place where I didn't need to hurry anywhere, didn't need to do that reenactment of the Soviet system when everyone expects of me to do something and keep it and leave it with the collection. So where I'm supposed to produce value for which I had been invited to. And another example of the residence, Cella Ranieri in Italy, in a castle. It works under the principle, under the following principle. Expert council and former residents nominate someone, and the expert council rotates every few years. So I was there with writers and musicians. Again, this is a space where you are not supposed to leave anything. So they give you lunches that you can take with you up to your studio. And in the evening, you all met over dinner with some exquisite Italian food, and you can discuss what you work on. So you can spend a month or 2 months there and look at the tree if this is what you need at the moment. And about who I'm gonna be after Burnout, I think, Snezhana, we talked with you about this, about our fantasies, what we would do if we weren't artists. I decided that I was a baby elephant trainer, looking after baby elephants. That's where I'll stop. I would like to very briefly highlight two things. You are talking as a person with two modes of practice, as organizer and artist, and it is very important for us as organizers of residencies. We understand that, but as a personality, as an actor, many people may think that second mode, we can't switch from our organizers mode into the mode of the person who is supposed to replicate. So that's supposed, right, or must. Or again, from the creative person mode who is focused on what is supposed to ooze something, then to switch into the mode of the person who is taking care of others. That's difficult too. I'm a producer of major projects, and organization for me is creativity. This is very important thing for me when I imagine the projects, what it's gonna look like, who will be participating, what artists, what senses, why it has to be sustainable, what the outcome will be, where the funding comes from, what team, what PR relations. This is an important creative process which can be thought through in the strangest of places. And right now, I think about the discussion around residences, artist reflection about different residence types and how they understand, how they are understood, what they do. I would be very happy to be in the producer's residence where we could reflect on things on the other side. And I have started thinking, so why can't we? We have this Soviet heritage, intelligentsia type, when we're like gray cardinals that support that important world of art where senses are formed, and we prop that culture of the future. But we spend a lot of effort to do that, and it would be great to imagine a residence like that. I even think that it could be in the Nikola Lenivets area. So there are not just managers, but also actors, because our creativity is about compiling various actions, various people, various senses, artists. So that's something virtual. British Council, yes, I remember something. That was an internship. That was at the Strelka, I think. Well, it wasn't residence, that was work. I'm talking about residence where you have that empty space of freedom and calm, and this mild state where you don't owe anyone, and when you grow something, think against your colleagues. You offered Nikola Lenivets and that FemDacha case. FemDacha project is important. And many translators' houses are run like that. You book a slot, you want to get together with people with whom you want to share, you book a slot, and you are not due any final product, and you don't have that project proposal. You decided that for yourselves, and you mustn't share it with anyone, you mustn't declare it to anyone. In our case, my case, Elisa's case, where we think about processes, we must learn new things every day, but for us it is important to have a residence where you could formulate new spaces for projects, new links, new communications, horizontal, vertical. We know a lot of applied things. So I have 9 years of experience of training programs of Pushkin Museum. And when I work too hard and someone tells me, take a break and go to a museum, I said, well, are you mad? So I cannot take arts any longer as a break. Because whenever I go there, I start looking at the structure.
My name is Vasilisa, and I'm responsible for the visiting experiences at the Pushkin Museum. I would like to thank all of you for inviting me. And I would like to say a couple of words about the importance of the cross-functionality experience. There's been not a single interesting session for me about art residences, but what I heard here appears to be much more important, even more important and more interesting than some museum conference. So when we analyze the visiting experience at museums, we should not look only at ourselves. So I represent the Tretyakov Gallery, and we invite the Pushkin Museum to do some collaborations. We also plan some projects in the garage. So the tools that we lack, we try to spare them. And I urge all of us to make this cross-functionality experience even more cross-functional, so that art residences, the hosts and the residents of art residences, and would share their experience, so that we could analyze not only the visiting experience, but we could also share our experience with you, so that this custom journey from the idea to which museum I go, it promotes competition. So I need to choose what is more comfortable for me. So all of you have been talking about that. Alisa was talking and Jan was talking about that. So all of this is very valuable, and it gives the right mix, an amazing result that we can later on structure and put down. One more thing, I represent the financial field. So I'm a very systematic person. And when coming here, I saw the diary of the conference. I realized that that was the right place for me, because it helps us to structure our thoughts, whether we want it or not, but we spend the time on filling this diary. And I would come back and tell the Tretyakov Gallery, hey guys, this is what we need to do. We need the diary for ourselves, because this diary, it's the masterpiece of this conference. It's the essence of hospitality, and those chats that we have and the language used in chats is part of the atmosphere. It doesn't matter what our session is called. It matters how we work. What is mystery shopping? Mystery shopping is like, you try to imagine yourself as a regular visitor, and you go to a museum and try to buy a ticket. You see how well the staff of the museum treats you, and so on and so forth. It is like the test purchase at the shopping malls. So, I know that we need to improve our services. I never heard that such mystery shopping or test purchase are practiced at museums. I left the Pushkin Museum in 2016, but we never had such mystery shopping cases. Let me add one more idea. So I'm moving towards theater for 3 years already. And coming back, I started visiting various theater laboratories and these formats that we can learn a lot from, because in the theater and in performances, they discuss a lot about the horizontality, about the shift away from authoritarianism. So next year I plan to teach translation, and either this is the literature university in St. Petersburg and they have their creative approaches, or this is the practice which I do not actually understand. But the practices and approaches used in theatrical universities are truly nice. And when I'm listening to Teskaridze, for instance, the way he's telling about the dancing techniques and the teaching of those dancing techniques, this is something amazing. You know, I have very few colleagues of mine who travel and visit various residences and when they exchange experience, but this is a very rare thing. So my colleagues who are like over 70, they never travel, they are not aware of these practices. So these generation gaps, we need to be aware of those generation gaps. So when Ola Tarakanova writes something in the Post Drama Telegram channel, I understand her very well. For the last 2 months, they are discussing the idea of liberation and exchange of experiences. This is what we lack in museums and translation laboratories. So we need to enhance and expand not only in terms of institutional art inside the museums, but we also need to expand towards other artistic practices. Probably you can share your ideas. No, sorry, this is something personal. Probably, somebody else wants to say anything, to add anything. I'm not into artistic practices, but I'm also a curator. And next year I plan to start an art residence. Last year I spent in a curator school. I think we were about 17 from different regions of Russia, including Azerbaijan. And after that, we had 1 year online studies, and then we spent a week on the Lake Baikal. Well, and I would like to propose a topic to discuss during our next conference. What format of an art residence suits those who work in the field of culture and art? Well, indeed, we can merge formats. So you had an opportunity to cooperate with business or with theater, but I think that what we do has certain unique specific features. So during that week on the Lake Baikal, we were, in a secluded place, let's say, so we were in a closed space and we could exchange practices, exchange our experience. So communication between us reminded me of what is going on right here. So I can ask my colleagues some questions, not as an artist. With Oksana, we discussed the fact that she, as an artist, is sometimes afraid of asking for some advice, for some tips, for a recommendation. But as a curator and as a tutor, she has fewer barriers, and it's easier for her to communicate on such a management level. I have a similar feeling. So as an artist, I ask for a piece of advice very rarely. But but as a curator, I don't feel shy and I feel quite free to ask questions. So our conference is like of an art residence for all of us. So it's great if we could have 1 or 2 free days with no events, but discussing the ideas of what might be interesting for us as an art community is a good thing. So we can try to imagine what an ideal art residence would be for those who who work on the management side. This is probably something that I would like to learn more about during our next conferences. Well, I like this idea of having 2 free days without any events. And this space would give us an opportunity to it will give us an opportunity not only to go through the program, that busy program of the conference. It's great that this conference brought together such a great team, but probably it would be great if this conference would have no program at all. So we would just come together and we will get this effect of an empty space. And one more comment. We have less than 10 minutes because somebody needs to go. And I would like to express gratitude not only to interpreters, but also to the broadcasting team. Thank you very much. You made this conference possible for those who could not join us offline. And this is so important during the pandemic. Now, while drawing to a close, I would like to say that, well, there are certain issues which we have not yet discussed, which we have not yet paid attention to. So probably now it is the right time to ask the questions that you still have, and these will be the questions that we can further on discuss later. So generally, generally we can discuss such issues in the evening time, after dinner. Well, we understand that such time during the conferences is the time for networking. And then when you go to your hotel room, you think it over, you process all that you have learned during the conference. So probably now we can just propose some ideas that will be later on included into our next conference. Quite recently, I'm asked to tell about the system, the studio system that I built in my practices, the archive system, and sometimes artists ask me about money. And I generally say that I'm free to discuss everything. And I think that we need to have a session on money, on the economy of art residences and what it gives the artists. I never respond to invitations when they split the expenses. We need to understand how artists live in Russia. Therefore, things like visas, flights, and and the subsistence allowance or the traveling allowance is something that we need to speak about openly. So talks about money, the economy, so things like that need to be discussed. And I think next time probably well, many things happen during lunches and dinners. And if this is an open story, rather than split and separated into sessions, this gives a different dialogue and a different outcome. Well, my pain is that so such residences are generally referred to those that survive. I call them the so-called pasture residences, because the money that you get there is not enough to survive, you know. And when I come back home from art residences, I also need some money to live on. Therefore, the issue of money and economy is something that we need to discuss. So I fully support this idea. Over the last 2 days, we discussed kids a lot. So children are our people as well. So probably we need to integrate kids into these practices. So we need to teach kids, you know, such practices as well. And it also probably relates to the issue that some kids are brought up while we work on a regular basis. So Lena left, but I wanted to respond to her comment. There are artists who work as art managers. I'm one of them. And you cannot leave the artist at home while you go somewhere away to work as an art manager. So it doesn't work this way. So when in 2016 we started an art residence in a photographic museum, we had only artists working there. So this is a municipal museum which decided to have a team of artists to work there. Some of them also had some management qualifications, but these were practicing artists. It was great. We worked with Sergei Peteryaev and Anastasia Bogomolova. So, and there was some magic about that work. And it also gives you a higher level of comfort and a higher level of consciousness. You can easily switch from an artist to an artistic manager. And this is what our conference is about. Hospitality has no sides, has no boundaries. So it would be great if we would understand that. Thank you. So this is about transparency of our own practices and our openness towards our guests. Can I also share my experience of something which seems almost impossible? I stayed in an art residence. So a stay in an art residence that you arrange yourself. So during the pandemic, I stayed in an art residence that I arranged myself. Then the pandemic started and most people left. And I realized that I was acting as a resident of this art residence myself. It looks like the local organization, right? Yes. And I think one more important thing is that relations go up to a different level. The relations with the artists, with the people who host the art residences. So you get bigger trust, greater trust between people, So apart from residences, there are some other organizations that take part in the life of the city or arrange a museum. And I think this is a very good, let's say, capacity. So we are pressed for time. So probably we shall move on to the last question. Let me quickly add.
Out of all the questions that I'd like to talk about is, I'd like to piggyback on that topic with a bad guest. And what Christina said about the receiving party and the guests being on the same wavelength, and what was said in Sylvian's presentation about radical hospitality, because the idea of the radical hospitality promotes us not inviting our friends, but rather inviting other people. I would like to speak about safe space. And what's the point of inviting people that well, first, if well, you shouldn't necessarily know everything about your friends, or he or she shouldn't necessarily know about everything about you. And we keep talking about inclusivity, but somehow it doesn't include introverts who don't like late night parties, who stick to different hours. So they don't feel safe in that transparency where everything is recorded, screenies and selfies and dassies are made. And I would like to talk about this unconditionality, borderlessness. I think it's very important to think of that unconditional and borderless. And we need to talk about vulnerabilities of the institutions, because there are often stances can always be heard that institutions are not vulnerable and they have that power leverage. And I think it's very hard to strike a dialogue if this is the premise. I think it gets us back to the topic that was raised initially about falling in love. And I would like to conclude by the phrase, you must be so much in love with someone to share a flat with them. And this is about us, about our future, about borders, about openness and safety. I think, well, having borders and protect those borders is great. And this is not a contradiction, and we may feel hostility, and being hosts, we may not necessarily like our guests, right? But we need to keep the right to take that hospitality, right? Because this is a process, and in this process you need to prove your right to be the host and to be the guest. I would like to support Snezhana here, because it's not just about borderlessness and unconditionality, it's about agreement. There is nothing bad about the rules if they're all right with either party, or more parties if there are more, and if everyone is comfortable with them. But getting back to to the discharge of so much energy, and our yesterday's discussion, which was beyond the agenda, makes me think of a very important conclusion, that something that we haven't talked through properly, that despite the first session of the art residency conference, we finally get this widely represented figure of the art, but we didn't pay a lot of attention to the artist themselves. But thanks a lot to you guys, and you, Taus, and you, Kristen. This was very important. If this discussion has occurred, and if this is emotionally charged and necessary, it was a highlight of the program for many people with whom I've talked today. It revealed important topics, and if this took place, it means that we created this confidence space where everyone could find their footing in. I'd like to disagree with you here, because confidence space is when conditions are clear from the start and when you can agree or not to those rules. So there should be a change. Yesterday's situation seemed to me a little bit like hostage taking. So you felt like you were taking hostage. Me and all the others who came to listen to several people, but they ended up listening to a lengthy presentation. I realize that, I understand that, and I agree with you. What I really mean is, if someone dared to make that monologue, they could. We do not necessarily meet expectations, and agreements weren't in place, but at least we were able to speak about our pains. I think that the confidence space is a good phrase that can be applied to this session. I'm thankful to all those who have talked about their pains and responded to the others' pains, and even to all those who kept silent throughout the conversation. Thanks a lot.